Hi, welcome to episode 16 of the Candor Beach podcast. Today, we will be talking to you about renewable energy. Sailesh, we have a lot of renewable energy sources. What, in your opinion, is the best?
I
And
would
why?
say hydrogen. Hydrogen,
Hydrogen.
yeah, because the concentration of energy in a single molecule of hydrogen is
Mhm.
way more than fossil fuel, like octane or any kind of fossil fuel. So I would rather stick with hydrogen. I think it's two or three times more than a single mole of fossil fuels, gasoline.
Right, you say mole, I was thinking of the whole,
No,
it
no,
was
no.
thrown
It's
back to
chemistry. Chemistry.
Avogadro's number and like high school chemistry, but interesting. Um, So hydrogen, but we've been focusing forever about on solar energy and wind energy and hydroelectric energy. Are those sources dead? What has become of those?
I don't think they're dead, but they are more. For me, I would say they're stationary forms of energy. Hydrogen can be carried anywhere. Like it can be filled up in a tank and took everywhere, but you cannot carry a solar panel. Yeah, that you have cars with the solar. I think it was what was that company?
Lightyear. I think Lightyear
Yeah,
does it as well.
yeah,
There are a
but I
bunch
don't
of
know how
companies that do it. But what
exactly.
we are
So
talking about is Lightyear as a car concept. They harness the power of solar energy using panels on the roof to run the car. But yeah, go ahead. You're talking about carrying hydrogen as a source from one point to another. But isn't that why we have a grid?
I mean, when you're traveling,
Mhm.
so even if you take a electric car, right? So Tesla, for you to charge it, it's going to take a full charge. With a Tesla fast charge, it's about like an hour and a half or 2 hours.
So that's
So
electrical energy that's being stored.
electrical energy, right? So, but if you completely convert the grid source of energy from coal to solar, that's one of the major forms of energy. But then you can
That's still
even
electrical energy, though.
exactly. So
Right.
even in hydrogen, electrical energy is possible. Hydrogen fuel cells. So if you look, I'm not talking about the combustion engine. Like combustion, hydrogen combustion. We have the hydrogen combustion, and we have the hydrogen fuel cell technology, right? So fuel cell is basically you react hydrogen with oxygen, and the energy which is produced through it is electricity is utilized to run the car. That is hydrogen fuel cell technology. And then you have hydrogen combustion. It's just like a regular internal combustion engine.
So if I could just circle back to the question, what is the advantage of carrying hydrogen from one place to another? Like why I had mentioned the grid was because I figured if it's a question of transportation or storage,
Hmm.
don't we already have equipment that does that? Wouldn't it be easier if I just converted the hydrogen generated into electricity and then pushed it to the existing infrastructure?
I mean, how are you going to do that with a car? So what do I'm not able to understand your question probably. What I'm saying is,
Oh, I wasn't
you
thinking about just a car. I was thinking about energy in general, like hydrogen as a
oh,
source of
energy in
energy.
general. Okay,
Yeah.
sure, yeah. So no, I was thinking in the form of a car. So I
I
was
would
thinking,
convert to electrical energy. I wouldn't like if I had a Tesla as an example, if I had an electric vehicle, I would just use hydrogen to I would convert hydrogen to electrical power and then store it in my car.
yeah, that's the basis of fuel cell technology, right? So the hydrogen fuel cell. There's only no storage part of it. Energy gets created as you go, as you drive. There is, the this reaction is going on in the background, like hydrogen, combining with oxygen and creating energy.
Undoubtedly. I was just wondering what the advantage of carrying hydrogen might be, but Because, like, to my mind, to have it react the way you've wanted, or the way you want it to react, there are going to be specific external conditions that you need to maintain, because of which you
Yeah.
are going to want, like, say, if pressure and temperature are considered key considerations, and they just might be, or if you want to start the reaction. I don't know if hydrogen and oxygen just placed in a chamber are going to start creating whatever, like H2O plus. It's not going to be a nascent oxygen, but whatever the reaction is within a fuel cell, there are certain conditions that need to be met for it to create energy. And that's something that I'm going to have to actively invest in. I'm going to have to actively build out, and I'm going to have to actively sustain.
Okay.
As opposed to doing that, if I just converted energy generated from hydrogen to electricity, then wouldn't that be just fine? And this argument might just be incredibly inane, considering that to extract hydrogen, you might just need water. So I might be using electricity to break down those hydrogen molecules from water in the first place. And I'm saying convert it back. So that might just be stupid, but help me understand, like, what are the advantages of why is carrying hydrogen more efficient if it is?
So yeah, so carrying hydrogen is more efficient because, as I said before, the energy concentration of hydrogen is way higher. It's 3 times of fossil fuels, or if you compare it with like a battery. A battery, how much of a charge on a battery gonna last max? And we don't have cars which max go about like 300 miles on a single charge. But then you have a hydrogen, you have way more concentration of energy. So if you're able to particularly bring a good storage capability, I think there is a capacity to go all the way up to 1,000 miles on a single refuel.
That's fantastic. So basically, the advantage of hydrogen lies in its efficiency.
Yeah.
All right. And there was the conversation around fusion recently. A few months ago, we had
Mhm.
our first successful fusion reaction where we produced more energy than was expended to create the reaction. Is that something that's going to come in the near future?
Yeah, if that comes in and they're actually able to do it, it's actually right now the industry leaders are US and China, which are doing it. China was actually able to do it recently, and US actually the experiment which you was talking about was from US, so
Mm-hmm.
they actually got more energy than they expended. If that is able to do it, so basically it'll become completely renewable. You can get rid of nuclear, you can get rid of solar, everything. That will give you enough energy to give enough energy for the entire world.
Right. And just so everybody's clear, we're not talking about that happening in a fuel cell, because
No.
with the fusion, you are you are bringing together hydrogen atoms. So you are basically taking an atomic number of 1 and pushing it up to 2, which is helium, as opposed to what a fuel cell might generate, which would be, well, with a combination of oxygen, water. Right. So if hydrogen is going to be that future, how are we creating this hydrogen?
So like you said, there is one of the process of hydrogen is breaking down water molecules. Water is made of 2 atoms of hydrogen and one atom of oxygen, right? So you can break it down through electrolysis, or the major other one which everybody's using is methane reforming. So methane is 1
CH4.
atom of carbon and 4 atoms of hydrogen. So when you reform methane, basically in presence of a catalyst, it creates hydrogen, a little bit of carbon monoxide, and carbon dioxide. But then the major product is hydrogen, 2 atoms of hydrogen. So
And
that
how are you
is
powering these reactions?
either through methane reforming, you require natural gas. or methane, which is gobar gas,
Very popular
waste
in India.
gas from waste. And then if you're powering electrolysis of water, you need electricity, massive amounts of electricity, which can also be renewable if you use solar power.
Right. So you said using natural gas for electricity. Was that correct? Or no, you
No,
just
no.
said electricity for the.
For breaking down water, you need electricity. For methane reforming, you do not need electricity. You need a catalyst. It's more of a chemical reaction than electricity wise. Then you don't need to put in electricity to create hydrogen through methane reforming.
Electrolysis is also a chemical reaction because you have your anode and cathode and
Yeah. So, but the
electrolyte.
major form of you have to input energy in electrolysis. So,
And methane does not require that.
I believe not. Not the methane reforming doesn't. It needs. It's a chemical process, and you can extract hydrogen through that.
Understood. All right. So then would you be foreseeing a future where we are primarily extracting hydrogen from methane, or are we going to be looking at water as a medium? Because as per what I have seen, we've been talking about, and I've had these conversations with manufacturers. They've been focused on three forms of hydrogen energy. They've been talking about blue hydrogen, green hydrogen, and gray hydrogen. Blue hydrogen is hydrogen extracted utilizing natural gas. Gray hydrogen is using fossil fuels, and green is using renewable sources. And you're talking about methane, which is like if that works,
Blue
like if I don't have
hydrogen.
to, how would that be
Blue
blue
hydrogen is
hydrogen?
basically methane reforming.
Okay, so what can you walk us through the process of methane reforming?
So methane reforming, that's blue hydrogen, right? So you brought up the you bring up you have massive amounts of natural gas. You take basically it's breakdown of hydrocarbons, so you have the carbon and hydrogen, right? So you break it down using a chemical process and a catalyst. A catalyst is something which speeds up a reaction. And you break it down to carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and in presence of oxygen, of course, and hydrogen.
I understand, but what is the energy source? What are the external conditions that are fueling this reaction, so to speak?
Energy source for it is steam. It's also steam reforming in presence of heat. So you can. Oh, that's
And
what you
how
were
would,
trying to ask me.
yeah.
So okay, so sure. The energy source, yeah, it should be some kind of
What I'm getting at is basically like
heat.
if I'm like at the end of the day, whatever energy we are producing, it's all a conversion from one form to another.
Of course.
And how we achieve this conversion and what is that optimum state in which like I am expending less energy to create something that will give me more energy. And that might not make sense because we've learned the principles of conservation, right? Energy can neither be created nor destroyed. So we are basically converting it from something that is less efficient to something that is more efficient, just so everybody's clear on what we are getting at. So hydrogen, per your earlier argument, is going to be a more efficient form of energy, which is why we are breaking our heads. We're trying to figure out how we can extract hydrogen, why we are expending energy in other forms to extract hydrogen, right?
Yeah.
As I understand it, your steam methane reforming process is going to be under high pressure, like
Yeah, high
25
pressure and
bars
temperature.
almost.
So yeah, you need some kind of energy to heat up the steam, right? We have to bring water to steam, so which is energy you need energy to make it into steam. So either we need fossil fuel or we need natural gas itself to heat
Which
up
makes
the
it gray
water.
or blue hydrogen.
Exactly.
Right. And that hydrogen needs to be transported, like you were talking about. And that also is not something that has been solved just yet, has it? Which is why it's still out in the future. The
Yeah,
logistics of storage and transportation isn't solved per se.
hydrogen is very combustible, so it gets hard to transport it because if there is any difference in pressure, it can just blow up. So it's not like like it's also another problem where it comes out the energy. We were discussing previously that the hydrogen per mole of hydrogen has higher energy concentration. That is also a problem because if you start storing it in containers, and if the container becomes weaker on any side, it can just blow up the entire container. Yes, that is one of the biggest issues, and that should be worked on. That's why it's a future tech.
I was thinking about Oppenheimer and the conversation in the movie, like spoilers for people who haven't watched Oppenheimer just yet. But you know how they were talking about uh, the hydrogen bomb and how Russia
Mm.
might have hydrogen bombs? I mean, at that time.
Hmm.
Uh, and they were talking about how a fission reaction could fuel a fusion reaction, which would create an even larger explosion. So
Yeah, and
that
blow up
is
the
something
entire.
that this hydrogen energy could just end up resulting in.
Yeah, the atmospheric combustion. Isn't that what they were talking about in Oppenheimer? A
Yeah.
continuous chain of reaction which will kill the entire world.
So how safe is this energy?
It's safe, but the storage part is something. I think Toyota is working on it too. Toyota
Mhm.
has that's why fuel cell technology is picking up, but it's going to take time for storage. There needs to be a lot more research done for storage of hydrogen. So in that point, so I think you like what you favor comes into play: solar, other forms of renewables.
I mean, I wouldn't say I favor solar over something else, but um, I was thinking about how we've spent years, decades looking into solar energy. We've been talking about how we've been trying to make solar cells a little more efficient, right? Like there's been this whole discussion, this uncovering of perovskites as solar cells, and they have an efficiency of 25% to 29%. We've been talking about additional techniques, pardon me, that have been helping us stack solar cells one on top of another to increase the efficiency per unit area.
Hmm.
So we've made that progress. Why hasn't solar energy, why aren't we talking about solar energy as the future then? Why is it hydrogen? Like there has been progress. People have been focusing on solar energy for God knows how long.
Yeah. So
Why aren't roofs all covered with solar panels? Why aren't deserts filled with solar panels? What is happening?
so if you talk about solar, there are two things, right? There is the solar panel technology, and there is the solar concentration. So they have this technology where you take the mirrors and point them at a one location, and all the solar rays are concentrated there, and the heat is used to melt salt, and it's the molten salt over a period of time, as slowly, even at nighttime, that molten salt, the energy which is extracted from that molten salt can be utilized to generate electricity.
Yeah, I've read that
So,
those are the newest forms. Earlier, it was just photovoltaic cells that
mhm.
converted solar
But
energy
that
to.
was also a failure. There
Why?
was one done in Saudi Arabia because it didn't pay off as much they thought that it's going to pay off. The amount of electricity generation was not optimum as how much they actually thought it could
So
generate.
it wasn't a very efficient form. That's the first
Mhm.
challenge. which I think people are looking at overcoming, like with the perovskite cells that we were talking about. The second thing is durability, because some of these places are faced with the harshest of climates. Like we've been talking about that, I don't know if we ever brought it up on the podcast, but there has been an instance where we've been talking about beaming down wireless energy using solar panels on satellites. Now, I mean, I'm talking about low orbit Earth satellites, and with that, space is a harsh climate. So designing for something to sustain in space for a certain period of time is something that is not going to be incredibly economical. Similarly, lacing deserts with solar panels is also not going to work because it affects the ecosystem there. Because suddenly, like the Earth that was used to getting a certain amount of, not sunlight per se, but heat, and creatures that were living in and around that place are suddenly displaced by these large panels that are spanning across the ground. You are going to change the ecosystem, and that could cause issues elsewhere in the world. They're talking about the butterfly effect, right? Like we could have something of the butterfly effect, and that could damage the ecosystem elsewhere. There were, like, I was reading this article about why the Sahara Desert isn't covered with solar panels, and they were talking about how if you did that, that would affect the ocean currents in and around the place, because it would affect the flow of air above the Sahara, which would affect the ocean, which would then affect ocean currents that neighbor those ocean currents, which would then maybe have potentially detrimental effects on the Amazon rainforest, which is currently a large carbon sink for us. Like the point of renewable energy is sustainability. Carbon sink, like carbon capture is a massive part of that. We'd be ruining the Amazon potentially if we disturb the environment in the Sahara Desert.
It's just not that. There is another thing. So as the temperature increases, the efficiency of solar panels go down.
Yeah.
So putting it in a desert is actually not really, it doesn't help. It's not going to give you high generation of electrical energy through photovoltaic cells. So first thing is, you have a light of irradiance. There is a lot of irradiance in a tropical area, which is good for the solar panels. But also with that, the heat which comes with it is not good for the solar panels. So the increase in it's like it cancels itself, right? So that is one of the major issues of solar panels. Of course, there are new technologies which should come in, and you have the half-cut solar panels. There are a bunch of other stuff, right? So, but it's going to take a little bit more time. But you cannot just do that on the desert and expect you're going to get massive amounts of electricity. But if you try to do this in a temperate region, there's not enough irradiance
Sunlight,
for
right.
it to sunlight to give you so much of optimum amounts of energy as you get in a tropical area.
I don't know if that is entirely factual, I would say, because there have been positive use cases of the Tesla roof in the US and in Australia, like when it's been installed, because I think that was the biggest issue, right? Like they weren't being installed.
But Tesla was planning on installing 1,000 roofs a week. In total, they installed only 3,000 roofs till now. So
it's a laborious process. I hear it takes like 5 to 6 months. I was watching Marcus Brownlee's review of the Tesla roofs 1 year in. He said that he'd started it in November, December, and it got done in June, July. So it took a while, like 8 months nearly. And installation, they have to come in and understand the size of your roof, manufacture to the size of your roof, and then start installing panels, because it's a seamless integration. The benefits are tremendous, of course, but like long story short, like what I'm getting at is there may be cases for optimum usage of this. I wouldn't write it off just yet. Now,
no, I'm not writing it off. but
Right.
it's another a problem which
Yeah,
solar
it's a
has to
potential
solve.
challenge. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is a challenge. Agreed. Now, two things we haven't talked about fully just yet. We spent quite a bit talking about hydrogen energy, wind and hydro. When I say hydro, I'm
Yeah.
talking about dams. I'm talking about tidal energy. Talking about wave energy. What are your thoughts on those?
First, let's start with wind.
Yeah,
So windmills, since you brought up wind, windmills are highly to make a windmill, the carbon footprint is about 1,700 tons of carbon dioxide to create one windmill. Of course, if it's at proper usage, you can recover that in 9 months of windmill usage, considering optimum usage, not not below optimum usage. So it takes about 9 months to
for a
actually save.
carbon offset, sure.
Yeah, on a carbon offset. So that is one of the things. So, and the environmental damage it also causes, like it kills a lot of birds. So windmills are known to kill a lot of birds, so
You don't need that one stone for two birds.
yeah, so you got three wings for multiple birds.
Yeah.
So that is one. So, and the second thing, so if we're talking about tidal energy, I'm not sure why
I
it's
wouldn't
not.
end your conversation where it's at, because solar energy is something that's big, that is something that people are pushing for. So not solar
Mm,
energy, pardon me, wind energy, like
mm-hmm.
Suzlon energy, right? We were talking about investing in it,
Yeah.
had invested in it. It's now debt free, by the way.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's now debt free, or they've raised some money, and about 1,500 crores of that money is going to go into, if I remember correctly, is going to go into servicing its debt. So clearly there is a growing use case for wind.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the other challenges? Like in my opinion, is like you've talked about the environmental impact, like impact on birds, the manufacture, the carbon offset that would be required, the energy generation for the carbon offset. The second thing I would think about is land area. It requires large spans of land, and you need a lot of these just there. The land is not being used for anything else, or possibly not going to be used for anything else, because it's not like you can build houses under a large windmill.
Yeah, it reduces your real estate value if you do that under the windmill. But me personally, if you're going for wind, it's better to go offshore, like no onshore, like deep inside the sea, where there's not a lot of birds. Birds tend to be close to this the land,
Sure.
right? So if you far deep inside the sea and build these windmills, I think that's a better way to do it. But the problems with those is, let's say if you have windmills have about like 400 liters of oil, which is inside, the windmill. I hope you know that. So that's another carbon footprint which goes with it. So the oil with inside, let's say if you have an oil leak inside this windmill, it's going to cause an oil leak in the middle of the ocean. So that's another issue to deal with. So these are the disadvantages of wind. I'm not trying to bash it, but I'm trying to give you both the advantages and disadvantages of it.
And the noise as well.
I mean, the noise is fine. You're in the middle of the ocean. It's okay. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, no, my head was still stuck on the whole, like, what if I had a windmill on the top of my roof?
Yeah, I mean, the real estate actually goes down. If you have high tension, power lines close to your house,
Mm.
real estate values go down in Australia, Europe, and America. I'm not sure about India, but in America, if you do that, your real estate goes down by 30%.
Wow. All right. Tidal, hydroelectric and tidal.
Tidal, what is
Waves as well.
very interesting? I'm not sure why they didn't go behind tidal. Tidal is one of the best and cleanest energies.
Like wave energy is ever present. Like it's partly because of gravitational pull from the moon, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's always there. Like, and currents are continuing to assist with creating, I don't want to say waves and amplitude and such, like wave notions, emotions, which can generate energy. The thing there is that you remember when we were talking about space being one of the harshest environments? The middle
Mm-hmm.
of the ocean is not the safest environment either. It is your equipment is going to take a battering, and I'm not just talking about a battering from waves because that is potentially a good thing, but I'm talking about the wildlife there. The wildlife isn't going to be like if you introduce turbines there. The wildlife isn't going to be like, oh, encroachment in my territory, I'll just move to another place. They're going to want to go and investigate. There have been
So
cases of sharks,
wave
as an example,
energy.
biting in.
So what if you're talking about tidal energy? What my perception is underwater currents. I'm not talking about on the surface. So
Oh,
if you're
okay.
looking at underwater currents, it's not the even if you put a turbine, like there's currents which go on deep inside the water. If you're able to utilize, extract energy through that, that is one of the major sources. But what my concern is, like you said, like it's going to affect, the life underwater, like the fishes and all that stuff.
And the
But
survival of the equipment, the durability of the equipment, that's not going to be the easiest.
yeah, the salt water is going to kill it. Second thing
It ruins
is,
my metals, it ruins my AC's outside unit, and I'm just like, what, 200, 300 meters from the sea. Imagine
yeah,
being right in there.
that's another thing which goes along with it. I don't think it's going to affect the sea life, like because the turbines won't affect that unless they come with the netting and everything, right? So the turbines shouldn't be affected by the sea life.
All right. Now I was thinking about yeah, tidal energy turbines. I see what you mean. I was thinking about wave energy and the equipment that's going to float on the surface. You are going to have to think about ways in which you can prevent like a curious shark from coming in and chomping down on the equipment just to see what it is.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
but the currents is a better way to do it than like I know what you're talking about. You're talking about the tidal energy on the close to the shore, like the water rises and goes
No, I
back
was
and you
actually
like
talking about middle of the ocean, but yeah, tidal energy, you could have it close to the shore. I think the main challenge there is transportation of energy, right? Like you'd have to
yeah.
have the efficiency might not justify the costs.
No. And with regards to currents, like the underwater currents, we still
Hmm.
don't even know. We didn't even map the ocean well. We mapped the space much better than the ocean.
Right. All right. So we've talked about the different types of renewable energy sources. We've talked about some of the pros and cons in terms of the storage, the transportation, the potential hydrogen bombs, as an example. Now, who's using what? Tesla solar energy. That's at least that's what I've seen so far. Tesla solar electric future. Um, Reliance in India and Adani, they've committed to hydrogen. At least that's what I remember.
Yeah.
The Indian government's talked about hydrogen powered cars coming in. Reliance and Adani have committed to hydrogen. So that is something that is potentially coming into the future. Adani Green, Suzlon, we were just talking about that. These companies are committed to renewable energy of some forms, but not necessarily a hydrogen future. Like with Suzlon, they're talking about wind energy. What do you see about the different companies and what their commitments are?
So India is actually investing heavily into hydrogen,
Mm,
but India is mostly wants to do, I think, hydrogen combustion. But Reliance and Adani are big into hydrogen fuel cell technology. So because they are trying to buy the battery tech, and there was what was that in industrial plant with fuel cell technology they were trying to buy, right? So or build, I mean, Reliance especially.
I don't remember exactly what you're talking about.
I'll pull it up. I'll add it to the description. But basically, yeah. But hydrogen is going to be future in India, so it's betting heavy on hydrogen. So with regards to companies, I'm not sure about Suzlon, really. But Adani and Reliance are gearing up towards hydrogen. Yes, that's correct. But
Fantastic. So
Tesla,
that, yeah, sorry.
Tesla, if you look at Tesla, most of it energy comes from coal-powered grids.
Which is
So it's
funny,
a
right? Like
hypocrisy.
potentially, like you could make that argument uh, about efficiencies, and maybe the efficiency calculations talk about carbon neutrality, but whatever. That's not the conversation right now. Like, we're talking about renewable as the future. Um, so clearly, these companies are lending credence to your argument of hydrogen being that future. And that is, at the end of the day, what works, right? Like the future is going to be what adoption is going to be. If supply is hydrogen, demand is going to shape itself as hydrogen as well.
Yeah.
And so I get that. I can see why hydrogen can be the future, but I'm going to have a follow-up to that. What about distribution? And
Hydrogen distribution.
I'm talking about a couple of podcast episodes back, we were talking about the one grid. There were talks in the US about a super grid. There were conversations. I forget what company uh, was looking at power distribution between the UK and France. So let's talk about the EU region, uh, about the gas pipelines that they have, about China's conversation, about India's conversation, about unified grids, basically. Where do you think we fall with that?
It's a long shot. Yeah, I understand. Like
Why?
the one sun, one grid. I, I think one sun, one grid between India. I think Saudi Arabia is in the pipeline to actually build connect the grid with India. If you look at it, it started with internet. So the internet actually, originally, if you look at it, we have internet optic fiber lines from Singapore, India. So if you look at it, that's actually created that idea of sharing electricity. Yeah, I understand. If you look, certain countries are skeptical about it because if your grid is actually supported by your enemy countries, they can literally shut it down in the middle. So when you need it, so I understand those disadvantages, but overall, if there is a good alliance, a strong alliance between these countries, the energy can be shared.
I don't know what you'd call a strong alliance between any countries, honestly, because within the European Union, you would have assumed that they'd be incredibly strong, right? And I'm not talking about Russia and the Nord pipe stream. I am thinking about when Greece defaulted, or when Spain, Portugal, and some of these other countries went into a little bit of an economic spiral. It wasn't like, I understand that there was support and support per what was feasible, but at the same time, there were conversations around, like, why should I be bailing these countries out? Why should I be investing my resources for somebody else's wealth? And that's a conversation that's going to keep coming up. It's human nature. You can't escape that. I would say if there was this concept of this one grid, one earth, whatever you want to call it, like a unified grid across countries, you would need a certain neutrality. You would need either a nation like Switzerland, who has remained neutral for a while. I'm saying this because there was the Swiss card that was a part of that used to be loaned out, but yeah, they've been neutral for a while. Like if you had a country like Switzerland, or if you I don't know, like one of these islands that just were there, and you had a nation that just was responsible for this grid alone, then maybe things could work out. But they could be attacked. They could be like the US could have just torpedoed North. Like there were conspiracies about the US terminating that, right? Like to benefit themselves. And I'm not
Yeah.
saying that that has happened, but things like that could happen. Like things like that could happen in the future if there was one grid. I could just stop your operations if I felt like it. And so I don't know if this one grid thing is going to come to fruition or if it's going to come to anything.
Yeah, it's a long shot, man. So it's really not like there's no guarantee it's going to take off, but it's a noble idea, right? So if it works, well and good. If it doesn't, we stick with our own energy security.
Right. So one final thought around the grid specifically.
Mhm.
We are living in a world where things are powered by technology. You have AI. How do you see AI working in this entire setup?
In the grid setup,
Hmm.
um, optimization. AI can be utilized for optimization. Like where like instead of doing it manually, I think AI can be AI powered optimization is the best way to go. Like let's say if you have a grid in a certain part of the grid is lacking electricity, AI can take over and the algorithm can actually guess where
Redistribute energy,
exactly.
basically.
Um,
Understood.
they have the same thing with battery technology, right? So now they're doing AI powered batteries technology for powering the cars. So that is another place where AI can take over.
Right. I was going through some articles about how there is this conversation about responsible demand or responsible usage, where when there is low production, people opt into this program. Where there's low production, they tend to reduce their use of electricity, and when
Yeah.
there's higher production, they can proportionately increase their energy. I don't know how feasible that's going to be, but that's an idea that's floating about, and that's where maybe AI could assist. Another thought that I had was smart grid distributions. As we get a little better with the distribution of renewable energy, um, like let's say there are solar panels across multiple roofs, that just becomes a thing. Then storing energy, sending energy back to the grid, helping the grid find a balance. Like if we are pushing for an electric car future, that is going to put a strain on the grid. But
Yeah.
if buildings, apartment buildings in India and houses, we get solar panels or some sort of renewable energy setup that is able to offset its own consumption and send energy back to the grid. Send energy back to the grid when we aren't using it, like at night time when energy consumption might reduce. That is something that could benefit us greatly. And I think I think it is time that we invest in the concept of a smart grid. Like there's widespread investment in the concept of a smart grid. And I think that that's something that AI can definitely shape.
Agreed. The thing where it comes out is I think the one grid, one sun, one earth thing is to offset the nighttime. Like, what if where are you gonna get energy at nighttime if it's a solar based technology? So you can actually extract it from a country which has sunlight right now. So yes,
Right,
I do agree. So smart grids, if the alliance works, it's going to be fantastic.
right. I mean, not just alliance. I'm talking about intra-country, like inter-country,
Yeah,
whatever the right word is. Within my own country, I should have
yeah,
a smart grid. Now, final question, closing thoughts. Fossil fuels, are they dying out?
I don't think so, man. It's still going to be there. Fossil fuel is still going to be there. You still need, for example, you need grease. Where are you going to get grease from? From refining fossil fuels. You need basic stuff like petroleum. You need it. You need plastics. You need you need nylon for your clothes. Everything. You still need fossils. You can just remove fossil from for energy, but you still need it in your general life. Like everything is plastic. I mean, everything is plastic. I'm not talking about Kim Kardashian, but I'm just saying.
I wasn't thinking about Kim Kardashian, but all right. I mean, all right.
Final
Interesting.
thought.
Final thoughts. I agree with your scope of hydrogen. In my opinion, it's down to adoption. If supply is hydrogen, demand is going to have to shape it into hydrogen. I understand where you're coming from with respect to since hydrogen is a more efficient form of it is going to be a little more efficient in terms of fuel release, energy release. That is
Yeah.
something that we are going to have to invest in and possibly work out how we can store and move it around and yeah, whatever. I'm gung ho hydrogen.
But you're still not satisfied with this fossil fuel answer, I feel like.
I no, I don't care about fossil fuels as much. I was very excited about the whole tidal energy, the wave energy when I'd read about it. That was something that I wanted. I would have hoped that we would invest in if possible, but I understand that it might not be the most feasible in terms of the efficiency of transportation, the
Yeah.
efficiency of conversion. So for the time being, I'm happy to back hydrogen. And maybe like work out the efficiency of usage. Maybe that is something that makes sense for us at this
Yeah,
point
I
in
guess
time.
the pod changed your mind about hydrogen. You were a
It
solar
changed,
backer.
yeah, it changed my mind for sure. All right
Well,
then.
yeah.
Thank you very much, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.